Case story of the prophet Amos and the plumb lining. In the days when Uzziah was king of Judah and Jeroboam II ruled over Israel, there lived a shepherd from the small village of Tekoa named Amos. Though he was not a prophet by profession, nor the son of a prophet, the Lord called him to deliver a message to the northern kingdom of Israel. Amos was a humble man, tending sheep and sycamore fig trees, but God chose him to speak boldly against the injustices and sins of the people. Amos traveled to Bethel, a prominent religious center in Israel, where he began to proclaim the word of the Lord. His message was not one of comfort but of warning and judgment. The people of Israel had grown complacent and corrupt. They had turned away from God, indulging in idolatry, oppression of the poor, and moral decay. Despite their outward displays of religious observance, their hearts were far from God. One day, as Amos stood in the midst of the people, he shared a vision the Lord had given him. He said, "This is what the Lord showed me. The Lord was standing by a wall that had been built true to plumb, with a plumb line in his hand. And the Lord asked me, 'Amos, what do you see?' I replied, 'A plumb line.' Then the Lord said, 'I am setting a plumb line among my people Israel. I will spare them no longer.'" The plumb line was a tool used by builders to ensure that a wall was straight and true. In this vision, it symbolized God's standard of righteousness and justice. The Lord was measuring his people against his perfect standard, and they were found crooked and out of alignment. The time for judgment had come. Amos declared that the Lord would no longer overlook the sins of Israel. The high places of idol worship would be destroyed, and the sanctuaries of Bethel would be brought to ruin. The kingdom of Jeroboam II, which had enjoyed prosperity and expansion, would soon fall. The people had trusted in their wealth, their military strength, and their false sense of security. But they had forgotten the God who had delivered them and established them as a nation. Amos' message was met with hostility and resistance. Amaziah, the priest of Bethel, confronted him and said, "Get out, you seer! Go back to the land of Judah. Earn your bread there and do your prophesying there. Don't prophesy anymore at Bethel, because this is the king's sanctuary and the temple of the kingdom." But Amos stood firm, unshaken by the opposition. He replied, "I was neither a prophet nor the son of a prophet, but I was a shepherd, and I took care of sycamore fig trees. But the Lord took me from tending the flock and said to me, 'Go, prophesy to my people Israel. Now then, hear the word of the Lord.'" Amos continued to deliver God's message, warning of the impending judgment. He spoke of the day of the Lord, a time of darkness and not light, when God would bring justice to the earth. He called the people to repentance, urging them to seek the Lord and live. He reminded them that true worship was not about empty rituals, but about justice, righteousness, and compassion for the poor and oppressed. Despite the urgency of Amos' message, the people refused to listen. They clung to their sins and their false sense of security, believing that they were immune to God's judgment. But Amos' words came to pass. In 722 BC, the Assyrian Empire invaded Israel, destroyed its cities, and carried the people into exile. The kingdom of Israel was no more. The story of Amos and the plumb line serves as a powerful reminder of God's holiness and justice. It challenges us to examine our lives and align ourselves with his standards. It calls us to pursue justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. And it warns us that no nation or individual can escape the consequences of turning away from the Lord. Amos' courage and faithfulness in delivering God's message, even in the face of opposition, inspire us to stand firm in our convictions and speak truth in a world that often rejects it. His story reminds us that God's plumb line is always set among us, calling us to live lives that are straight and true before him.